In the tense and strategically vital region of the Red Sea, tensions between the United States and the Iran-backed Houthi rebels have reached a dangerous new height. A recent attempt by the Houthis to lock onto or possibly fire at a U.S. fighter jet represents not just another chapter in their long-standing hostility, but a pivotal escalation in their military posture against American forces. This confrontation wasn't just another skirmish in the ongoing regional instability. It marked a bold move by a militant group that has been emboldened over time through proxy warfare and increasing technological capabilities. The incident underscores how deeply the conflict in Yemen and surrounding areas has evolved beyond its initial boundaries.
More U.S. attacks in the northwest. They say 17 airstrikes targeted the Sada province.
Washington will continue its military campaign in Yemen until Houthi rebels no longer have the capacity to strike ships.
That this is not maybe over today or tomorrow, but can go on for weeks and weeks and weeks.
This is not a one-off. This is an effort to deny them the ability to continue to constrict and control shipping.
Now drawing in major global powers into direct confrontation. The jet in question was reportedly on a standard surveillance or patrol mission, flying in international airspace over the Red Sea. These patrols are a regular part of U.S. naval operations, intended to ensure safe passage for commercial shipping and to monitor threats in a region that has seen a dramatic uptick in drone attacks, missile launches, and asymmetric warfare. The Houthis' decision to target a high-value American aircraft, potentially an F/A-18 or a similar multi-role fighter, reveals a dangerous level of confidence. These jets are equipped with advanced radar, electronic countermeasures, and stealth capabilities, making them challenging targets even for state-level militaries. For a non-state actor like the Houthis to even attempt engagement with such an aircraft signals a clear shift from harassing tactics to outright confrontation. Whether this was an actual missile launch, a radar lock-on attempt, or a combination of both, it represents a violation of international norms and a breach of the unspoken boundaries that even proxy groups have historically tried not to cross. U.S. military aircraft operate with strict rules of engagement, and any attempt to threaten or attack them can invite a devastating retaliatory response. In this case, the response came swiftly and decisively. Within minutes of the provocation, U.S. forces launched a retaliatory strike on the radar and missile installations believed to be involved in the targeting of the jet. According to defense analysts and officials familiar with the operation, the retaliatory strike not only neutralized the threat, but also sent a message about the overwhelming response capacity of American forces in the region. The timing of the incident also raises serious strategic concerns. The Middle East is in a period of heightened instability, driven by the ongoing conflict in Gaza, the broader confrontation between Iran and Israel, and the rising influence of non-state actors like Hezbollah and the Houthis. For the Houthis, provoking the United States may serve multiple purposes. It galvanizes their domestic base, who see themselves as resisting Western imperialism. It also sends a message to Iran's rivals that Tehran's proxies are not just regional nuisances, they are formidable forces capable of striking at global superpowers. This, in turn, gives Iran greater strategic leverage in negotiations and regional diplomacy. From a military standpoint, the U.S. is unlikely to allow such provocations to go unanswered. The response to this attempted attack was not only immediate, but also comprehensive. Defense sources report that the retaliatory strike involved precision-guided munitions and possibly naval assets, such as destroyers stationed in the Red Sea, equipped with Tomahawk missiles. These assets are part of a larger deployment designed to ensure maritime security and to project power across a region where threats can emerge with little warning. This incident will likely prompt a reevaluation of rules of engagement and increase the readiness of all U.S. and allied forces operating in the area. The operational context of this event also matters significantly. The U.S. military does not conduct these patrol missions in isolation. They are typically coordinated with intelligence assets, including surveillance drones, electronic signal intercepts, and satellite imagery. The fact that the Houthis attempted to target such a high-profile aircraft suggests either a miscalculation or an intent to provoke a broader response. It also raises questions about the origin of the weapon systems used in the attempt. Were they Iranian-supplied systems, modified Soviet-era weapons, or perhaps even systems smuggled in through back channels? Whatever the source, The attempted engagement reflects the Houthis' growing sophistication in integrating these tools into their battlefield strategy. Another dimension to consider is how this incident impacts broader U.S. strategic interests. With Washington already dealing with flashpoints in Eastern Europe and the Indo-Pacific, a renewed military entanglement in the Middle East could stretch resources and complicate diplomatic efforts. Yet failure to respond robustly could embolden not just the Houthis, but other adversaries observing how the U.S. handles provocations. The Biden administration, which has prioritized strategic de-escalation and a pivot toward Asia, now finds itself at a crossroads where restraint could be seen as weakness and action could risk further entanglement. It's important to highlight that this provocation is not just a footnote in the larger conflict in the region. It represents a signal, intentional or not, that the boundaries of engagement are shifting. Whether this was a lone act by an overzealous unit or a deliberate order from the top levels of Houthi command, the implications are significant. It forces military planners to reconsider air defense protocols, mission planning, and rules of engagement in what was already a complex operating environment. Chapter 2: U.S. Immediate Retaliation. Striking back with precision. The retaliation that followed was not just about neutralizing a tactical threat, it was also about reaffirming control over a region increasingly riddled with asymmetric threats. Within minutes of detecting the attempted targeting of the aircraft, U.S. forces had already analyzed the origin of the radar lock or missile launch attempt. The response came fast, facilitated by the tight coordination between U.S. Navy vessels, aerial reconnaissance platforms, and command centers monitoring real-time intelligence. It was the kind of response that could only be achieved through decades of integration between technology, doctrine, and combat readiness. The strike itself is reported to have involved precision-guided munitions, likely launched from nearby U.S. Navy destroyers equipped with advanced vertical launching systems, or possibly from MQ-9 Reaper drones loitering in the region. These assets are always on standby in areas like the Red Sea, where strategic choke points and international shipping lanes require constant monitoring. The weapon systems used in the strike were designed for accuracy down to the meter, minimizing collateral damage and ensuring the destruction of specific targets responsible for the attempted attack. The principle here is simple: eliminate the threat without widening the scope of conflict. By targeting radar installations and anti-aircraft missile sites used in the attempted jet engagement, the U.S. effectively removed the tools that enabled the provocation while avoiding infrastructure with any civilian proximity. These strikes also fit within a broader U.S. strategy in the region, a strategy defined by the concept of dominant presence with measured force. It's not about starting another war, but about defending interests, allies, and international norms. The use of precision-guided munitions in this case reflected an effort to apply overwhelming military power in a highly controlled and responsible manner. The message was crystal clear: any direct threat to American forces would be met with a response powerful enough to deter future actions without tipping the region into open conflict. The effectiveness of this retaliation lies not only in its speed, but in the intelligence that drove it. Real-time satellite surveillance, electronic signal interception, and aerial reconnaissance gave U.S. commanders the information they needed to pinpoint Houthi radar emitters and surface-to-air missile batteries. The ability to detect and neutralize threats with such granularity showcases the technological advantage held by the U.S. military. It also demonstrates to adversaries, both state and non-state actors, that high-stakes provocations will be countered with lethal accuracy. Such precision attacks are supported by a massive logistical and intelligence network. From command centers in the region to forward-deployed assets and unmanned systems, the U.S. can execute real-time counterstrikes without lengthy decision-making chains. This capability significantly raises the cost of aggression for adversaries. It means that even before the jet returned to base, its attempted targeting had already been answered by missiles reaching the radar system or missile launcher that had dared to threaten it.
The precision strike also forms a deterrent template for future actions. By demonstrating the capability to strike back without escalating into a larger campaign, the U.S. military preserved the stability of a region already on the brink. The response wasn't about retaliation for its own sake. It was about neutralizing a threat, deterring future attacks, and protecting the integrity of missions vital to regional security. This restraint, paradoxically, amplifies the power of the response. It shows that the U.S. doesn't need to carpet bomb an area to dominate it. A few well-placed missiles fired with intent and backed by solid intelligence send a louder message than 1,000 warplanes. In the aftermath of the strike, defense analysts and intelligence agencies likely monitored Houthi communications and movements for signs of regrouping or planning a follow-up attack. The absence of immediate retaliatory activity from the Houthis indicates that the strike may have achieved its goal, not just eliminating a physical threat, but disrupting a psychological one. Removing a radar system isn't just about degrading capability, it's about blinding the enemy and removing their confidence to act. Without functioning sensors and the assurance of protection, the incentive to provoke powerful adversaries diminishes. While tactical in execution, the strike served a broader strategic objective, upholding freedom of navigation and maintaining air superiority. These principles are cornerstones of U.S. global defense posture. If American aircraft can be threatened in international airspace without response, the entire framework of deterrence begins to unravel. By acting decisively, the U.S. preserved not only its immediate mission, but also the rules-based order that governs military engagement globally. The retaliation also sets a benchmark for future military engagement protocols. The lessons learned, both from the Houthi provocation and the U.S. response, will inform adjustments in threat detection systems, rules of engagement, and strategic signaling. Already, the U.S. is likely enhancing electronic surveillance and deploying more advanced countermeasures across its aircraft in the region. The strike wasn't the end of a story. It was the beginning of an evolving response plan that includes kinetic action, electronic warfare, and strategic communication. Chapter 3: The Military Technology Edge. Why the U.S. prevails. The decisive advantage that the United States holds in modern warfare is built not only on experience and strategy, but also on an unparalleled foundation of military technology. When the Houthis attempted to target a U.S. jet operating in international airspace over the Red Sea, they encountered this overwhelming technological superiority. The U.S. response was not just swift, it was methodical, calculated, and rooted in a vast network of interconnected systems designed to detect, analyze, and eliminate threats before they can materialize into real danger. At the core of this capability are the aircraft themselves, particularly platforms like the F/A-18 Super Hornet and the F-35 Lightning II. These jets are not just weapons. They are flying sensor hubs, outfitted with the most advanced radar and electronic warfare systems available. When a Houthi missile battery attempted to lock onto a U.S. jet, it was almost certainly detected immediately by the aircraft's radar warning receiver. This system continuously scans for hostile radar emissions, identifying the direction and type of threat. Upon detecting the lock-on attempt, the aircraft would have automatically activated its countermeasure suite, which could include radar jamming, evasive maneuvers, or even deploying decoys to confuse incoming missiles. But the power of U.S. air dominance doesn't stop at the jet's onboard systems. It extends into a wider ecosystem of surveillance and reconnaissance that operates 24/7 around conflict zones like the Red Sea. High above the battlefield, satellites capture real-time imagery and signals intelligence. Predator and Reaper drones, equipped with high-resolution cameras, infrared sensors, and signals monitoring tools, patrol the skies, feeding live data back to command centers thousands of miles away. This creates what is effectively a digital dome of awareness over U.S. operations. If a Houthi radar system switches on or a missile launcher begins preparation, it is flagged, tracked, and targeted almost instantly. In the Red Sea region, where asymmetric threats like the Houthis use small teams and mobile missile platforms, this kind of integrated military presence is vital. The ability to detect a launch attempt in real time, confirm it through multiple sources, and respond with overwhelming force ensures that adversaries think twice before initiating conflict. The Houthis may have anti-aircraft systems, but they do not operate in the kind of information-rich environment that the U.S. does. Their radar operators often work with limited situational awareness, unable to see the broader picture or coordinate effectively across long distances. This limitation is deadly in a fight against a technologically advanced force. The U.S. also utilizes cyber warfare and electronic jamming to great effect in this type of conflict. If the Houthis activated their radar systems, they may have been hit not just by missiles, but by sophisticated jamming systems that render those radars useless. U.S. aircraft and support units can jam communication signals, GPS navigation, and target acquisition systems used by enemy units. This electronic suppression not only disorients the enemy, but also paves the way for precision strikes without risking American lives. Even when the U.S. is not actively striking, its mere presence in the region serves as a deterrent. Carrier strike groups can project power hundreds of miles inland, making it dangerous for any group to attempt hostile action. The radar coverage, air patrols, and satellite surveillance all feed into a system that spots threats before they fully form, allowing preemptive or immediate retaliation. When the Houthis attempted to target a U.S. aircraft, they underestimated the reach and speed of this response mechanism. What might have been a high-value target for them quickly turned into a devastating loss, as U.S. forces struck back with precision-guided munitions that dismantled the launch sites and radar systems used in the attempted attack. It wasn't just a victory in a single skirmish. It was a message broadcast across the region. Attempting to challenge American air dominance in the Middle East results in overwhelming and immediate consequences. Chapter 4. Broader regional implications. The attempted Houthi targeting of a U.S. fighter jet has significantly reshaped the strategic atmosphere in the Middle East. What might have once been regarded as a series of localized, asymmetric confrontations in the Red Sea has now escalated into an overt and highly dangerous confrontation between a regional insurgent group and the world's most powerful military. By expanding their targets from commercial shipping and surveillance drones to direct engagement with U.S. combat aircraft, the Houthis have crossed a threshold that not only escalates the conflict, but introduces new geopolitical variables with far-reaching implications. This latest act of aggression sends a clear signal. The Houthis are prepared to challenge the United States head-on. While they have long relied on tactics designed to harass or disrupt regional shipping and destabilize maritime trade, this pivot toward high-value military targets drastically elevates the stakes. The attempted engagement of a U.S. jet, a symbol of American air power, marks a bold new phase of confrontation. And unlike commercial drone harassment or oil tanker disruptions, which are usually met with diplomatic condemnation or calibrated military responses, this level of provocation risks inviting a more sustained and kinetic retaliation from Washington. Already, the Pentagon has quietly increased its force posture in the region. Additional carrier strike groups are patrolling the Red Sea and Arabian Sea, while B-1 and B-52 bombers have been repositioned closer to the region, signaling Washington's readiness to escalate if necessary. Such deployments are not merely for show. They serve as a reminder to all actors, including Iran and its proxies, that U.S. dominance in the region's air and sea lanes is non-negotiable. This intensified presence not only counters Houthi ambitions, but acts as a strategic deterrent to any other non-state actors or regional adversaries contemplating similar escalations. The move by the Houthis is not occurring in a vacuum. It comes at a time when American involvement in the region was perceived by some to be winding down. For years, the U.S. had been attempting to reorient its military focus toward the Indo-Pacific and away from protracted entanglements in the Middle East. However, attacks like this force a reevaluation of strategic priorities. The U.S. may now have no choice but to deepen its engagement in Yemen and surrounding waters. Not because it seeks war, but because deterrence now demands a display of unwavering resolve.
There's also the undeniable Iranian dimension. Iran has supplied the Houthis with increasingly advanced drones, missiles, and communications equipment, essentially enabling them to develop their own indigenous command and control capabilities. The attempted targeting of an American aircraft could not realistically occur without at least indirect technological or advisory support from Iran's IRGC Quds force. Tehran, however, plays a careful balancing act. While it uses the Houthis as a strategic tool to harass the U.S. and its allies without direct attribution, overt acts like these make it increasingly difficult to separate the actions of the Houthis from those of Iran. The U.S. has already warned that continued escalation could bring consequences not only for the Houthis, but for their enablers. This could manifest in indirect ways: tightened sanctions on Iran's drone and missile programs, cyber disruptions targeting weapons transfers, or even limited kinetic strikes on IRGC-linked logistical hubs. If the situation escalates further, the U.S. might even begin interdicting suspected weapons shipments en route to Houthi-controlled territory, which would represent a major escalation in the shadow war between Washington and Tehran. The UAE, for its part, has already shifted naval and air assets closer to the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, reinforcing its bases in Eritrea and possibly reactivating forward positions in southern Yemen. Joint drills with U.S. forces have reportedly increased in intensity, with a focus on aerial defense, amphibious operations, and drone interception. The overall message is clear. The Gulf states are preparing for a potential spike in hostilities, and the Houthi attack on a U.S. aircraft might be the spark that ignites a broader, multilateral counter-campaign. But beyond the military implications lies an economic dimension that cannot be overlooked. The Red Sea and Bab al-Mandeb Strait are among the most important maritime choke points in the world. Nearly 10% of all global trade and 7 million barrels of oil per day pass through these waters. Increased militarization, especially following a high-profile incident like the Houthi attempt to down a U.S. jet, could raise insurance rates on commercial shipping, delay cargo transit, and trigger rerouting of vital supply chains around the Cape of Good Hope, adding weeks to delivery times and billions in additional fuel costs. The global economy, already strained by supply chain shocks, cannot easily absorb another prolonged disruption in the Red Sea corridor. European and Asian economies in particular are vulnerable to such volatility. The European Union, while not yet fully militarily committed to the region, may soon find itself pressured by its own member states to contribute naval resources or surveillance support to maintain the safety of key commercial routes. Similarly, Asian giants like China, which relies heavily on Middle Eastern energy exports, may face dilemmas over how to secure their trade interests without exacerbating geopolitical tensions with the West. Back in Washington, the incident has reignited debates over the appropriate level of U.S. involvement in the Middle East. Isolationists argue that American forces should not be drawn into another endless conflict over regional disputes. Yet strategic realists contend that unchecked aggression, especially one that directly endangers U.S. military assets, must be met with overwhelming force to deter future provocations. The Biden administration for now appears to favor calibrated deterrence, swift retaliation without full escalation, but the Houthis' next move could quickly upset this careful balance. All the while, the Houthis are using this confrontation for propaganda purposes. Their state-run media has framed the incident as a bold resistance effort against American imperialism, a narrative designed to strengthen domestic support and galvanize regional sympathizers. This rhetoric complicates diplomatic backchannels seeking de-escalation, as the Houthis now view this moment as a symbolic victory, even if their radar installations or launch platforms were destroyed minutes later. In asymmetric warfare, perception is often more important than material loss. In the broader calculus, this single incident has set off a cascade of potential responses, alignments, and risks. The American jet targeted over the Red Sea was not merely a lone aircraft. It was a symbol of freedom of navigation, of U.S. resolve, and of the red lines that must not be crossed. Whether the Houthis realize it or not, they have entered a domain far more complex and dangerous than previous rounds of maritime disruption. The region is now bracing for what comes next. Chapter 5. The Future of U.S. Houthi Engagement. The attempted targeting of a U.S. fighter jet by the Houthis represents more than a tactical misstep. It is a pivotal moment that will shape the trajectory of American engagement in Yemen and the Red Sea region for the foreseeable future. While previous attacks on commercial vessels and unmanned systems drew sharp condemnation and calibrated responses, this incident has triggered a new level of strategic scrutiny in Washington. Military planners, intelligence agencies, and diplomatic operatives are now in full consensus. The rules of engagement have changed. In the wake of the jet provocation and America's swift retaliatory strikes, the Department of Defense has already begun enhancing its surveillance architecture over Yemen. Intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance (ISR) missions have been intensified, with more MQ-9 Reaper drones and RQ-4 Global Hawks tasked with monitoring Houthi movements, tracking mobile missile units, and identifying command centers across northern Yemen. These real-time eyes in the sky give American forces the ability to launch precision strikes within moments of identifying hostile intent. This rapid reaction capability has become essential, especially given the Houthis' increasing reliance on mobile launchers, camouflage weapon depots, and civilian infrastructure for concealment. Such strikes may not remain isolated or reactionary. Analysts within the Pentagon are now openly discussing the potential for a dedicated operation modeled on the early phases of campaigns like Inherent Resolve, the U.S.-led mission against ISIS. This approach would involve a combination of persistent surveillance, partnered intelligence sharing with Gulf allies, electronic warfare, and a series of rolling airstrikes aimed not at containment, but attrition. The goal would be to shatter the Houthis' ability to project force beyond Yemen's borders, effectively neutralizing their capacity for asymmetric engagement in the maritime and aerial domains. At the same time, international humanitarian organizations are voicing concern that a renewed American military campaign could exacerbate Yemen's ongoing humanitarian crisis. The United States, to its credit, is taking these warnings seriously. Officials from USAID and the Department of State have been quietly coordinating with relief agencies to ensure that any future military action avoids disrupting critical aid corridors. The Pentagon is reportedly updating its strike list to prioritize low civilian risk targets and is also considering the deployment of additional psychological operations assets to encourage Houthi defections and dissuade civilian cooperation with militant operations.